No, this stream is not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. It could be. It could be. They've emailed me a lot of times, but I'm not into that game right now. Anyways, welcome everyone. Welcome to Wednesday Side Quest. We are 45 minutes early just because of scheduling today. We had to do things a little bit earlier. So welcome to Side Quest for your Wednesday. If this is your first live stream or the first video you're watching, Side Quest basically is just the news from the past week that I thought was interesting and I kind of want to discuss with you guys. I used to say it was going to be like TLDR, but I actually ended up giving you guys my viewpoints on everything. So hopefully guys are having a good week thus far. We are halfway through it. It is hump day, so we're grinding through. Guys. So let us grind through the news for this week. But before we get started, big thank you to our tier 4 as well as tier 5 channel members: Brax Miles, Phantom Manager, Mike Osborne, Catholic Queen, CJ Turner, Dina, Positive Sarcasm, Fast Vlogs, as well as Austin. That's our first page. And then another page. Big thank you to Zach Lee, Blue Phoenix, Parker Satterfield, Mustafa, Trainer Ethan, Devin Weld, Jerry, who is actually in the chat right now. Hello, Jerry. How are you doing, sir? Uchiha Madara, Parker, again, K. Robert, Z Shadow Dragons, as well as Oscar Young. So let's jump right into the news. As again, I shot on my Twitter feed. If you have questions, concerns, as always, try to save them for the end of the stream, just because they'll be more highly likely that I will actually read them and answer them. We try to stay on track as much as possible. So first off, new Need for Speed game coming out, and it's gonna have quote unquote anime elements in terms of its design. Immediately when I thought about this, or I saw this, I thought that my immediate thoughts went to Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. So it's a nice change of pace. I think every once in a while, when you talk about sports games, especially like racing type games, eventually they do have to kind of change it up a little bit in terms of design. Otherwise, it just gets stale. Need for Speed's actually been pretty good of changing things up. They went with like a story-driven elements, and yeah, I played like there's been so many Need for Speed games, and they've done a good job of just kind of changing things up. None of them are kind of like the same, especially some of the ones that I've played lately. So yeah, Need for Speed with anime elements coming up. What anime elements are, we don't know. We don't know what anime elements are, but they're coming, guys. They are coming. But yeah, so next up. So I talked about this actually. Amy Hennig actually came up randomly in a side quest a couple weeks ago. I think it was about Jade Raymond and how her studio that she started up got acquired by PlayStation. So Amy Hennig, if you guys are unaware of who she is the original writer from the Uncharted series. Eventually, after I think she got finished Uncharted 2, I'm pretty sure it was Uncharted 2, she actually got poached by EA, and she was poached several years ago to work for EA to write a storyline for a story-driven Star Wars game. Then eventually, obviously, EA kind of went through that period where they weren't really focused on single-player experiences. They really wanted to focus on long-driven multiplayer experiences that they could add microtransactions for. So her game that she got poached to do never came out. It just never came out. It never came to fruition. Kind of like how Jade Raymond went to a EA Motive and to work on a Star Wars game, and then that game just never came out as well. So yeah, both of them worked on Star Wars games that just never came out. They just never happened. But Amy Hennig she ended up working at Visceral Games, which was a company. It was originally the studio that made the Dead Space franchise. After the flop that was Dead Space 3, she began working on the Star Wars game, which once again never came out. And once that was shelved, she actually started her own studio, and then and then apparently her studio has been hired by once again EA to once again write for another Star Wars game. So it's kind of come full circle. There are a couple things about this. Obviously, she's a good writer because writing the Uncharted series is a huge milestone, and it's like a career builder. But I think it kind of gives us an idea of how EA has kind of come roundabout way to appreciating and respecting the fact that single player experiences can make money. I think that the best example, obviously, as of late is with Elden Ring. Primarily, there are multiplayer elements in Elden Ring, obviously, but it's primarily a single player experience that's it's gonna be game of the year. It's gonna sell like 20 million copies when everything is said and done. So I think it comes full circle, the fact that EA has understood that there's just so many multiplayer games that people can play. There's just so much time that person has to invest into multiplayer experiences. There's so many games out there that can have loot boxes, and once in a while you just have to release single player experiences. So hopefully this game does eventually come out. It is being led by her own studio now, so she's not being part of EA Visceral. It's her own studio working on a game, and eventually we hope that it's going to come out one of these days. So yeah. Next up, so Unreal 5 is like taking the world by storm. It's Epic, man. Epic is just going to be printing money. Epic, obviously the owners of the Unreal Engine, the owners of Fortnite, even though a large portion of the company is owned by the Chinese company called Tencent. But anyways, so Unreal 5 is basically every game is going to be made with Unreal 5 coming up in the near future, which makes sense because it's the best way to make sure that your game is optimized as possible. We're kind of seeing like this renaissance in terms of game development, where a lot of companies have basically decided that they're going to ditch their own first-party engines and just build everything on Unreal and just pay for those licensing fees. Probably the only company I think that is holding out right now is Ubisoft, because they have their proprietary Anvil engine. But a couple days ago, it was either yesterday or today, a game developer basically did a demo of how they recreated Superman. It's not officially Superman, obviously, because the new Witcher is going to be on Unreal Engine as well. But someone has recreated a Superman-like type game on the Unreal 5 engine, which looks pretty cool. It looks pretty promising. Obviously, we don't have Superman logos because of licensing issues, but I thought this demo was just really interesting. I don't understand how a Superman game, in terms of how do you keep the gameplay fresh with a Superman game, because he's literally probably one of the most powerful beings in the universe. So I think that's always been the challenge of doing a Superman game and doing it well. How do you make the gameplay stay true to the source material but still keep the gameplay fresh? It's just it's always a challenge. But this fan-made Superman demo was really interesting. So moving on, so the writer for Portal 1 and 2 has basically said he wants to make Portal 3, and he wants you guys to write to Valve and pray for it to happen, because he's not getting any younger. That's exactly what his words are. He's not getting any younger, and he would like to make Portal 3 happen. So obviously this is something that we all want to see, but it just kind of also reveals to the fact that this game's not in development whatsoever. If you don't have a storyline, that means this like squashes all ideas of that there could possibly be a Portal in development if the writer for the game is basically taking to the internet and saying, you guys need to galvanize to make this game happen because I want to make it. So yeah, it's a cool story. It just kind of like puts the nail in the coffin that Valve isn't making Valve isn't in the process of making any games right now. So, yeah. Anyways, so Nintendo is a formal complaint has been filed by. This is really funny because I actually talked about this the last couple of side quests where I mentioned that the video game industry is kind of like in the transition of transitioning all its workers to unions. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. It's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually. Video game developers are going to be unionized, at least in the Western world. In terms of North America, probably Western studios in Europe as well. I also said during those past live streams that the only company that's going to hold out or put up the most fight is going to be Nintendo, because they are a Japanese-based company. And that's just how the culture works in Japan. Japan is highly anti-union in terms of its engraved culture. And basically there was a formal complaint filed by some of its workers that Nintendo has engaged basically in anti-union activities, stating that they've made coercive statements, illegal surveillances, and firing or refusing to hire employees attempting to organize a union. So once again, it kind of just puts the nail in the coffin of what I've been talking about the last couple weeks, that unions are coming to the video game industry, and Nintendo is probably going to be the fun. Basically all Japanese companies, all companies based in Japan are going to hold out, but Nintendo's obviously probably the biggest company that's in Japan. So it's coming. Unions are coming to the video game industry. It's just a matter of how fast it's going to happen. Just trying to keep in the line of the news of everything. So here are some new games that are coming to Xbox Game Pass. F1 2021. Last time I checked, it was 2022, obviously. Need for Speed, 7 Ways to Die, Bug Snacks, Turnip Boy, Unsold, and Search and Destroy. All these games are coming soon to Game Pass. Not really any bangers out there, but it's just more games coming to Game Pass, so you can't really complain when more games are coming to your platform. So yeah, Bug Snacks might be a great game, but I never played it. So the primary news for this week is that in-game advertisements are going to be coming to consoles eventually. It's not coming right away because they're still in the development process, but Microsoft is building an advertisement. It was reported that Microsoft is building an advertisement program that lets brands basically place advertisements in free-to-play Xbox games. And shortly after this was announced, it was also reported that Sony is also working for in-game advertisements, basically the same program that Xbox is working on. So there's a lot to unpack here, okay, and there's a lot to discuss, because video games are getting more and more expensive to make, and especially since we've moved on to this fad where the majority of games are free to play. Not free to play, are open world. Video games are just going to become open world games are just going to become the standard moving forward. It's just going to happen as technology evolves. Open world games just become more and more viable, especially when you talk about the high success of Elden Ring. Open world is going to be the gold standard moving forward for basically all types of video games. Personally, myself, I still would appreciate on the rails narrative-driven experiences, but it's hard to move away from what is doing well and what sells. So that means that as games become more expensive, video game publishers are going to need a way to make more money to make video games, especially when you talk about the fact if video game studios and video game publishers become unionized, that's going to hike the rate of what they need to pay workers, because eventually they're going to be standard working conditions. Probably they're going to have to start paying for overtime for these workers, because as of right now, the majority of video game publishers and video game developers aren't paid. They aren't given overtime pay, especially when you talk about crunch, in terms of pushing a product and crunching to make sure it actually meets a specific release date. Video games, so combined with open world, combined with unions, video games are just going to become more expensive to make. So the initial report is that, so this is just a long thing coming. Like when you talk about going to the movies, you have advertisements before the movie starts, and then you also have product placements of movies, product placements during the movies. You watch any Transformer movies that come out, like there's so much product placement. Bud Light, Beats by Dr. Dre. You watch the Avengers, there's like that weird scene where they're trying to steal the Tesseract back, and randomly Robert Downey Jr. drops like a comment about Axe body spray. It's there. It's just a source of revenue. It's gonna happen. So the initial report states that it's both companies are gonna be just focusing on free to play at the moment, placing in-game ads in the free to play games. But you would be absolutely naive to think that after several years of adding extra revenue, that it's going to stop to free-to-play games. It's once you open Pandora's box for in-game advertisements, there's no closing it. It's not going to stay with free-to-play games. It's going to expand into basically all games coming in the near future. It's just a matter of how egregious they're going to be and how targeted they're going to be. Because the next step after free-to-play games is going to be putting them in all games, and then the next step after that is using algorithms to target ads. So using algorithms to basically try to cater the ads to the specific player based on their online history. It's gonna happen. It's a scary thing, but it's happening right now with your cell phones. Your cell phones are constantly listening to you. And there's no, like, we've all had that moment where we say something out loud, like, I want to take a trip to Cancun, or I'm thinking of planning a vacation. It's no secret that eventually all the ads that you see on your phone, oh, look, there's a sale for a trip to Cancun. There's a sale for this vacation that I haven't even planned yet. It's gonna happen. So we're going to move to free to play, we're going to move to all games, and then we're going to move to targeted ads. Write this date down in history on April 20th. I am predicting it right now, and whenever this actually comes to happen, I'm going to rewind this video and show you guys that it's going to happen. Probably like the scariest thing that has ever happened to me is so I was having breakfast with Tara, like randomly, and then for some reason we talked out. You guys, all the American people out there probably don't know who this is, but we randomly broached the topic of David Suzuki. David Suzuki is it's like a very obscure not obscure, but he's pretty famous, but he's basically an environmentalist, and he just randomly came up the topic during breakfast. And then as soon as we got in our car, I plugged in my phone. My phone automatically started playing a podcast by David Suzuki. It's I was just like, come on, man. iPhone, you could at least try to hide it. You could at least try to be a little more covert with it. And then, but as soon as that happened, it quickly, like the podcast like just stopped. Yeah. So yeah, it's just gonna happen. And you say that, Robert the Rooster, that you will not buy a game with in-game ads, but you watch movies with product placement ads on it. You go to the movies and you are subjected to watching ads before the movie as well. It's naive to say that you flat out will not buy video games that have in-game ads, because it's just you're gonna be forced to, because if that becomes the gold standard of how video games are consumed, and if that's really the only way video games become financially viable, then it's just where it is. Like, it all comes down to how they're going to be implemented. Like, if you're driving through an open world game and you see like a billboard and there's like a Coke advertisement like on the billboard, that makes sense. You also could have, but if you have to like watch like an ad during a loading screen, that's a little bit more egregious. And then I don't know how. It's just a matter of how it's implemented. But I'm telling you right now that it's not going to stop at free-to-play games, because once you open Pandora's box, these publishers are seeing the copious extra amount of ad revenue they're going to make. It's just gonna keep happening, and the ads are going to adapt too. Just like how on podcasts, how like the ads at the beginning of podcasts are constantly changing. I could very well see that the ads, in-game ads of video games happening as well, just constantly rotating based on the mood or what's popular. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and you'd be naive to think that it's not gonna happen. So yeah. That's pretty much it. That is my long rant of where I think that in-game ads are going. I'm sorry that if that everyone is you obviously feel free to disagree with what I'm saying, but based on how I feel like the world is going these days, it's just how I think that things are happening. So yeah, that is in the news for the week. Feel free to take questions now. Feel free. Yeah, Death Stranding had monster product placement as well. So yeah, we already see product placements in some video games already. It's just Nigel, your hard disk means like absolutely nothing anymore. Like a hard disk game, it's because like your game is gonna have to eventually install onto your console, and eventually you're going to update the game. It's gonna need an internet connection of some point in time. So there's no fighting it. Once eventually your console is gonna have to connect to the internet at some point. All right, so let's take questions now. I don't. Could you see ED mats on games in GTA? You could probably, maybe. Skelly asks, how blatant do you think they will be with ads in video games? I say it's going to be up to the publisher, obviously. And some publishers are going to be better at it than others, just because there's such a variety of video game publishers. So it's like, some people will do it well, just like anything in life. Some companies will do it well, some people will do it absolutely terrible. I expect EA to do absolutely terrible at it, but I expect like Microsoft to be a little bit better at it, just because they're not in the driver's seat as of right now. So you can't be like the trying to play catch up and being like the company headlining that you are the company with the worst blatant ads in your games. Yeah, so it like I said, long story short, to answer your question, it's really going to be based on the video game publisher, how blatant they will be. Am I gonna get the new Need for Speed? I'm not really into racing games. If it looks cool, yeah, maybe. Yeah. Take-Two would be pretty good. Yeah, Take-Two would be probably pretty good. No, I say that, but Take-Two hasn't had a great history in terms of its PR department. If you want to talk about like the debacle that was the pre-orders of Evolve, like you had to like spend like $1,000 if you wanted everything. So Take-Two is they've also had their blemishes with their track record in terms of doing things well. I don't think that a good Superman game is possible. It's just he's too overpowered. He's too overpowered to make a video game about, I think. Intel graphics cards, I haven't really looked into them as of right now. I just picked up a new graphics card, but it's good that another company is entering the market. Anytime you add another company, especially someone as big as Intel, competition always makes the market better. If they announce a new BioShock game, I may revisit some of them just to kind of do like a pre-hyped series before the next one comes out. What do you think Sony's next great acquisition will be? I don't know why, but I am like in my head just think that they should acquire Konami, because that means that it would kind of be bringing it all back to Sony. So that means if Sony acquired Konami, then that means that we can actually get a new Metal Gear game from Kojima, because obviously Kojima and Sony are really, really close in their relationship. So I don't know. I think it's more of a fan. It's more of a fanboy take that I wish will happen, but yeah, I'm really hoping that Sony can acquire Konami and then we can get a real Metal Gear game. Okay. Nigel, you have to. You're thinking of like the most egregious in-game advertisement ever. In-game advertisements can be anything. It could be literally. It could be a video that plays while you're playing, or it could just be an image of a company in the background. Like, it all comes down. It's gonna happen. Like, it's gonna happen. There's no sense saying or fighting it. It's gonna happen. It's just, and like how egregious it is, it's gonna be based on the video game publisher. I don't know what RPG I'm gonna play next. I'm gonna jump later today, and we're gonna jump back into the Assassin's Creed Ragnarok expansion, streaming that. But in terms of what I'm playing next, it could be the next RPG. Could be Mass Effect. So, feel free to leave your comments in the comment box below. If anyone can give me timestamps, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys coming out for this weekend side quest. We got a little bit heated, didn't we? We got a little bit heated with this conversation. I have all the hot takes. You guys probably could tell that I was like itching to talk about that one. Hot takes for days. You come to side quest every Wednesday for the juiciest hot takes. So anyways, thank you guys for coming out to this week's side quest. We'll be back next week every Wednesday. And it always could be worse for Rogue Penguin. It could always be worse, right? Talk to our boy Bento. And we'll see you guys in the streams. Or if I don't see you guys then, we'll see you guys next week for more side quests. Everyone have a great